Good, thanks, everybody.
And the sounds is a little high. Sounds like it might feed back. Maybe? No? That's okay? All right. It's a little on the loud side.
Okay.
I usually have to put the microphone really up close to overcome my fight with the sense that I'm shouting. So. There's still a few people downstairs, but they'll get here. They'll figure it out. We might as well. They're figuring it out. There's Mr. Kirchhoff. So, what should we talk about? There's so many threads of the teachings that Khenpo Rinpoche offered. There's so many aspects of this moment of transition. I still have probably a half a dozen questions that we didn't get around to asking Rinpoche that were collected from different practice groups. Ask yourself a question.
Yes, Bill, ask yourself a question and answer it. What question do you want to answer?
I have pages of questions. So, what's on your mind? What would you like to follow up on? Yes.
About the Green Tara practice. I've done a little bit of Green Tara, a couple different sadhanas, different times, and I always really enjoy the sadhana itself. But the 21 praises I find pretty opaque. And it's like, okay, well, there's sort of a sense of energy and stuff like that, but it's so tedious, especially when you have to do it 7 times in a row. And so I wonder if you can perhaps give us more of a door into that.
Ooh. Yes, I think you're asking this is what we should ask Eric to help with. And we've all done things with the practice and all have different relationships with that. I thought for a long time maybe I'd like to do it in English, and then I looked at the English and I found it that no, actually I just like the energy and the momentum of chanting in Tibetan. Thank you, because the what's outlined in very short, pithy ways is pretty opaque, and does actually merit a kind of extensive commentary. And even then, it may or may not be one's cup of tea. That might not provide the doors that really open to something in a fairly direct way. So. I ended up relating to it as something that was essentially an extended mantra that I felt sort of embodied all the qualities that I could imagine in all the different kinds of activity that Taras might engage in, and so that was my door to it. But it required memorizing the 21 praises in Tibetan, which I kind of tried to do, but it mainly just happened by virtue of doing it over and over again. But that's not an easy jumping off spot. So I think other people have other ways of going into that. Sopa.
Well, so Gelug training in it at Shravasti we did it all in English with the permission of Lama Zopa Rinpoche to Venerable Chitran. So I have them memorized in English. Again, you're gonna, every lineage you're gonna find a little bit different, of course, translations, even probably within one lineage. But there is a very nice paperback in the bookstore called Taming the Mind by Venerable Chitran, explaining each of the 21 Taras, colors, mudras, meaning in the Gelug tradition. So I always just, if I met the Kagyu tradition first, I would read that and just get what I can. Just be clear. It's not going to be the one you're going to then get from a Gelug Lama. But it's all the same, as every Gelug and Kagyu Lama I've talked to says, no difference, don't worry about it, no difference, So we get caught on the differences more because we're at this level. And they are, to honor them, it is important. So you might want to just take a look at that book. It's called Taming the Mind. And Tara the Liberator, I think, is the subtitle. And it's wonderful to know those. I always tell people, if you can, memorize something that you love. Memorize parts of the aspiration prayers, or memorize the short 8 verses of thought transformation, or memorize the 21 Taras. It's wonderful to carry those. You're driving along, your mind's sinking into the muck. And you can just pull that out and start going. So one of the easiest ways to memorize that I found, it was from some book about how to memorize, is record it in your own voice, while you're reading the thing. And then play it back to yourself in your own voice, saying it with your own voice over and over. And for some reason, it goes quite quickly. Because the only other way I really know how to memorize those is to be somewhere where every morning they say it. And when every morning they say it, and every morning you say it for a year or 5 years, then it's in there, and you didn't have to try. But if you can't do that, as I said, recording it, I just read all the 35 Buddha's prostration prayer into the microphone, into a tape, a little player, and then I would do the prostration saying it with that player, and it starts coming very quickly that way. Yeah, so that's what I know. But they carry a tremendous energy, I do want to say, the 21 Taras, red, gold, white, in rings of fire, burning things up, very peaceful, all kinds of aspects of generally those 4 activities of pacification, increase, wrathful, and accomplishing. Yeah, we have different words, but they're the same concepts. Those 4 things that all practitioners need. Yeah, pacify, increase, be able to be wisely wrathful against kleshas and against suffering, and then accomplishing all accomplishing. Yeah. So they carry that. Yeah, even you don't know nothing. And I did not know nothing. So they just carry it, which is probably really great because I didn't get conceptual about it. It was like, I don't know where I am and why I'm saying this, but it has its power then. Want to add anything?
Well, just there's also the book that Khenpo Rinpoche himself wrote about the Tara practice. Oh my goodness, yeah. Has multiple versions. But it's a big book. It has pictures of all of them and has a lot in there. But it is interesting that I mean, in the early days, my wish for a short Tara practice was one that didn't include the short would mean it wouldn't have the praises, but actually by the Tibetan tradition, if you had nothing else, you would have the praises. That is the heart of the practice. That is Tara practice. So even though there's a mantra, that's, you know, you can do that too, but really the pith seems to be that prayer. So therefore, it's nice to work with, trying to relate with it. And I do think, for me, it helped just to hear that. I want to listen again to Khenpo Rinpoche, you know, saying how, you know, all the things Tara is meant to do, and you know, if you just think about the different fears and the different, you know, things that she protects against, and just think about how that affects people and affects our lives, and the idea of a good an energy, or you know, a bodhisattva who works with that. And then, as he said, she's really a symbol for, you know, our own innate nature of mind that has this potential as well. And so I think that, you know, remembering the profound basis of the practice helps me. And I have to admit, I loved singing it together with Khenpo Rinpoche. And so I was thinking of using that recording and working with that some more. It helps to have that kind of, some kind of tune that makes it pleasant to recite, I think. But it is intriguing in English as well, and we've done it that way a little bit at another center, and thought, oh, it's surprisingly not too bad, you know, kind of nice also. But having a way to sing it in a way is good.
Yeah, having a tune for something that is extended actually makes a big difference.
Yes.
It'd be very nice, I think, if we actually, for things like the Muhammad aspiration prayer, and we figured out how to do that so that we could engage more of that dimension of practice, the recitation with the kind of the unified tone, and it's very potent. It's very potent. So when you said the word opaque, I felt like I understood it, but I don't know if I understood what you meant by opaque. But
Well, I am familiar with several different translations, some of them quite startling in their imagery, and they have some sort of an impact. You know, I always do practice in English. Tibetan doesn't do it for me, even though I love the melodies. But it's not practice for me, it's singing, which is like another kind of thing. So there's some sort of a nonverbal way on which the imagery does have an impact. I feel that. But it's more like, well, I can't make conceptual sense out of it. And it doesn't always have that strong impact, especially when you're repeating it over and over again. Yeah. And it's so long. So the whole thing becomes a kind of blur of, how do I get through this? And I've tried all kinds of strategies of just sort of sitting back and just, okay, this is just what's happening. This is what I'm just doing. You know, maybe if I was flipping hamburgers for hours on end, it would be, you know, you know, trying to bring that mind to it. But it's not. It hasn't kind of spoken to me in terms of, yes, I want to do that for my practice. Whereas, and I have done. There's a couple of versions of Tara Sadhana I know of that don't include the 21 praises. That Kathleen MacDonald has one in her book, How to Meditate, and I think Lama Zopa also has in the FPMT prayer books. I think there's a version. At least I've done it that way, and they also have a singable version.
Yeah.
but it's kind of Mickey Mouse when you look at the actual translation that's more literal, and you look at the single book version, it's kind of lost a lot of the edge. So I don't know, it's just kind of sort of a mishmash of my experiences with it, not quite gripping me the way I'm more engaged, like when I do the practice without it.
Kemper Rinpoche did mention that there was one, just a quatrain that was right at the end, which he said, actually, and as part of the empowerment, you should recite the 21 Tara praises 3 times. So, and usually it would be call and response, a couple of syllables, and he said that could take forever. So we're going to sing it together. And then we went through it once, and then there was this short piece afterwards, and he said, because this is the essence of the 21 Taras, we'll just do this part 2 times.
Yeah.
So
And that's on YouTube.
And that so you can, if you want to get sort of the, yeah, if you want to get sort of the authorization to approach it from that that perspective, you just listen to the YouTube and you listen to what he says about it, and then you can, I think, find some flexibility in there. But the things that you bring up are things that actually show up in more places than one in the transition of practices into our milieu of practice. So it's something I would welcome ongoing conversation about this, because we do have to sort of look into these things and feel our way to the point where that the kind of richness and impact and challenge that's in some of these things still comes through, while not getting lost in this blur of something that we can't really get traction with. We'll keep going. Yeah.
I just want to mention one small point that I know our Tara practice group here, instead of 2, 3, 7, it repeats 1, 2, 3 times. So, using sort of maybe a similar amount of time that you would do if you were doing it all fast, but doing it slower and still finishing the whole thing in 1 hour and 15 minutes. So anyway, small point, but that helps not to have to be doing the breakneck. The pressure to do it 7 times is serious. Yeah.
I had a question about what Kempo Rinpoche relayed to us about the connection between Tara and Dharmakaya, and sort of like he seemed to imply sort of like a general kind of like a relationship between Yidams and Dharmakaya, talking about sort of like emanation and sort of like a personification, like as if like all Yidams are like emanations of Dharmakaya. I just want to hear more about that and kind of learn a bit more about that topic.
So would I. But that was, and this is one of the reasons that I do think it would be actually valuable for us to take the recordings of the teachings and actually go through them and listen to some of these things and press pause and then have a chance to discuss things in more detail, because he was actually quite eloquent in his presentation of what we term the kind of the relative manifestation of any of these practices, any of the Yidams, whether it's Tara, Chenrezig, or whatever, that and the ultimate aspect of the practice. and he was also when he was talking about ordinary mind as well, talking about co-emergence, the kind of the co-emergent wisdom. It's something that if we get some kind of little grasp of it, we can see how it is that all appearances, whether it's in just our ordinary stream of appearance or the particulars of the skillful appearance of the yidams, any of those, that there is this potential for this co-emergent wisdom, you could say the wisdom and appearance rising simultaneously, and in that, then there's the potential for the ultimate is in all of that. But the appearances of Tara or Chenrezig or whatever yidam, those all have this in common. Can you recall the more elegant and pithy aspects of it?
Well, one of the ways I work with this in my practice is because I don't have the experience yet of looking around here and seeing all of you as emanations from the Dharmakaya or of the Dharmakaya, then, thank you, Jeff, then I see the Yidam practices as a way to step into a world of other different kind of appearances, and that helps shake up my stuckness on how solid you seem. And that was my sense in the one-year retreat, and what Lama Michael was working with us. I remember at one point he said something that was so helpful. He said, I think someone said, why are we doing like Chenrezig and he said, because by the end of a long retreat, what you would like to have happen, I don't know if these were his words, but it was the gist of it, is that world would seem more normal than your everyday, solid, everyday world. And I started going, oh, I see. It's training the mind to let go of this. Like if I look at an image of Chenrezig or conjure one in my mind of an image of light, that seems very, very different world with, its mandala of, lotus and moonseed and everything. But not different than Pat there sitting on that and being able to play with that. As Bill just said, all emanations of the Dharmakaya. But I don't see Chenrezig driving cars around and, and yelling at me or yelling at each other, or selling me something in the store. So it kind of helps shake that up. The more that I do those practices, the more it shakes up this sense of solidity, which I think is the kind of movement on the way to feeling free of it. Yet the teachings are, it's all Dharmakaya emanations, even this Betcha table. Cool, huh? So anyway, that's how I'm with it right now.
Yeah. The Yidam practices definitely give you an opportunity to look at things in a way where there's no question that your mind is involved.
Yeah, right.
Out here we think, no, I'm an innocent bystander. All you are happening to me. That's I got nothing to do with it here.
Except I'm plopped down.
Yes, I happen to be stuck here for the moment with all this. But the interim practice is like, no, that's you never can quite convince yourself that you're not a part of the scene, and so it's a very skillful means, and the particular appearances are skillful appearances that allow us to investigate mind and appearances within mind. And Khenpo Rinpoche did give a little encouragement as part of the Q&A to using the Yidam practices as a means for investigate the nature of the appearances that arise in the practice. So they're very skillful means. Bokar Rinpoche also once he said, somebody asked, why do all this with these funny arms and so much? Why would you do Chenrezig practice? These forearms white, because that's who you really are. And if we look at it from both the side of whether it's the relative compassion and loving kindness side, or the insight side, it's when we look deeply beyond our entrapment, where the kind of the natural, profound compassion arises. It's easy to see that's who we really are. If we look into the nature of things and see the nature of things, that's definitely who we really are. So the notion, but it's not like we disappear. That's one of the things one of the great downsides of using the word emptiness is the notion that kind of when it's all said and done, there's nothing left. It's kind of like zip, it's all done, gone. But that's not, no teacher has ever said that. It's all gone. So then, what is here? And that notion, that union of insight and compassion being the way of being, you could say.
It almost sounds like you're describing a practice that assists in like adopting a worldview that is closer to reality than the one we are currently that I currently believe.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct.
And through that to develop the bodhicitta worldview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, all of Vajrayana practice actually, though it says imagine yourself like this or visualize this. When we use the word imagine, we usually think of making up something that's not true. But all the Vajrayana practices actually revolve around imagining something that's more true than the way that we ordinarily see it from the perspective of our confused notion of things. So yeah, that's a kind of a ground zero principle of Vajrayana practice. And if you look in any of them with depth, you will see, that's a principle that you'll see. Or you could say, and look at it another way, if you use that principle looking into any of the practices will make much more sense from that perspective. So, Jeff.
This is very helpful. Listening to this, as some of you know, I've for 20 years now been very resistant to taking on this sort of thing, even though I love the Chenrezig practice.
Mm-hmm.
I recently, a month or two ago, just saw a brief statement from a lama. Can't remember who it was. I have it on my phone, so I can find it again. But it was almost in an impatient tone. It said, "You emanate something all the time anyway." you emanate your sorry ass position on this, that, and the other thing all the time. Why not try something that will?
Why not do something useful for once?
It was that sort of tone.
Yeah.
It was, and that really shook me up enough to take a photograph of this quote and take it home with me.
Yeah.
Sounds like Lama Yeshe. He used to say it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a Lama Yeshe kind of approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're hallucinating all the time. You're always doing this. So. Yeah, hallucinate closer to reality. That's good.
Hallucinate something with a point to it.
Yeah, something beneficial. Something beneficial.
So sometimes when I'm practicing Tonglen, I have the thought that I think about the suffering of a particular person or other people in general, and I think about I'm sort of like merrily doing my Tonglen, and I think like, if I were really feeling this, like I wouldn't really want to do it. Like I would really like, do I really want to like feel like I have the flu like somebody else does, or whatever that suffering may be. And so I feel, a little shallow in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, any suggestions for sort of amping up the authenticity?
There are various pieces to it. One element in Tonglen practice is just simply recognizing this resistance. That there's a piece there in that. But what the first thing that came to mind as you were talking is thinking about the piece of the instruction that always says, begin taking and sending with yourself. And this is not kind of an abstract or kind of a moral principle, that I should do this and then do that. It's very, very practical. Because if we've really done Tonglen with our own experience when we've had the flu, then we might see that we're not actually trapped by the experience of having the flu. And so with being able, the more that we can actually relate to our own experience in that way, then we can actually genuinely be with the experience of others in a more without the sense that, oh, well, if I had that, I'd be out of luck. I'd really be done in by that. But the more that we do it with ourselves, the more that we can see that actually we're not trapped in it when it arises for us. So that's kind of it's a very critical piece of that. Because if we don't actually see our way through our own confusion and suffering and our own resistance, if we don't see our way into that, then we will remain trapped by it. So the notion that we would actually be of assistance to another being when we're really still trapped by whatever it is, there's a limitation to that. It's not nothing. It's not like nothing. And so to go back to the first thing that I said, there's the element of just seeing our resistance, just seeing that piece is, and noting kind of the, you can say the limitation, but also the opportunity to open just slightly. That there are those opportunities. So that's one thing that I think about quite a bit when I think begin the exchange with yourself. I mean, it sounds like it's very, very simple, but do we do it?
Yeah, I love that question, Pat, because first of all, to me, it shows you're working it. Because so many people talk about Tonglen, and it's like, oh, that's easy, I really like doing it, you know? And it's like, I mean, because it is a beautiful thought, and you can just skate on the top of that beautiful thought, you know? I'll take in all the suffering, and I'll give everybody all the happiness. Great, done. But when we bump into the obstacle, when we're really like, I always use this example of my friend who suddenly became a paraplegic and now lives in a wheelchair. And I really used that situation when it occurred, partly because I love him so much, but and every time I'd be like, no, I don't want to be a paraplegic. I don't want to, live that way the rest of my life. And then you get to work right there. Who is that doesn't want to? So you can work right there, Who is that doesn't want to? You can work analytically there, but you also can just pierce through that. What is that? It's a thought. A thought I'm going to take it on, a thought that I'm not. Which one's more real? But then the one that helps me wend my way through that is something rises in that moment, really looking at that person's suffering and realizing their kindness towards me for lifetime and my love for them. That's where it's like there can be in some days a little kind of breakthrough of, yes, of course I'll do it. So, and nanosecond, because the self-cherishing always pops up. Well, that was a nice practice, but I'm sure glad I'm not, like that. But just watching it, because I just think we glide over the top of Tonglen a lot. And your question means you're not gliding over it, you're tackling it. Mm-hmm. So I'm totally with Bill. See it, see it, see it. Oh, there's the self-cherishing rising, my self-centeredness rising. No judgment, you just see it. What's it made out of? Nothing. But it feels real, but it's nothing. So just right there. Yeah. Really good work. Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the verses in prayers that say, if it will be of benefit for me to be sick, may I be sick. If it will be of benefit for me to be well, may I be well. And those are very challenging verses. But if we really think about it, just thinking about your friend, if your friend's experience had an impact on you that actually caused your liberation, we'd have to say, well, looks like it worked.
Never thought about that.
And then if we take a view of like the bodhisattvas who spend eons in hell just waiting for one being to kind of ripen just enough to get a ticket out and be able to deliver the ticket and say, get on the bus and go. It's your chance. Eons in hell to do that for one being that they know sometime I'll be able to give them the ticket. but that having that perspective, then it really challenges us, particularly with our view of, like, I got this one shot here, and I've got a lot of, even though I'm not skiing anymore, I might get back out there cross country skiing sometime. So I really don't want to be a paraplegic. Yeah. That would not be good for anybody. Certainly not for me. Not for anybody. We have all these kinds of things about our own personal agenda. But if we really take it seriously and really contemplate some of these things, what would it actually look like for me to take whatever circumstance I find myself in and use that and be able to manifest in a way that actually really did contribute to the liberation of beings, to their ripening and liberation.
And you can also, thank goodness for our imaginations. The other thing that extends me through that practice at times is imagining I take it on and he's free. And it's like, I think that's a piece of the real compassion piece in it that can hook you, into it in a good way, And then right away the other thing rises again. No, just watching it all. It's just a big show. And all empty, and yet so helpful to wend our way into how do we generate compassion. It's such a useful way because you're sitting on a cushion, you're not really becoming a paraplegic or getting the flu. But so powerful the way it makes the mind work toward being able to, in some lifetime say, may I go to hell if that's the best thing for beings. It's the first punch in Lama's prayer. Go to hell to save one being. Go for eons. That's pretty high bar. But that's what we need to think about. Yeah. Yeah.
May we free all beings.
Yes.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thanks, everybody.